Chapter 23. The Eye-Gate Box. We flew out of the top of the mountain, Cameron and I on Spirit together, and met the others under the archway again. One of the captain's wives informed us that Jade was resting and would be fine. We formed our plan and settled down to sleep a few hours before morning. Harold had also explained that we needed the early morning light for the eye-gate box to work. We awoke at the first rays of dawn and found a central location in the castle at the top of one of the middle stairways. The soldiers spread out over every floor of cells, ready to start breaking locks at our signal. Cameron and I stood with Harold and the box and blew our shofars. The soldiers began to break the locks and found they came off easily. Like everything else here, they were so old they crumbled apart from decay. The prisoners could have walked out at any time, but the enemy had manipulated their minds, so they had been wasting away for all these years. It was a terrible tragedy. As the doors opened and the soldiers encountered the prisoners, they received no welcome. The prisoners sat on their decrepit cots, staring ahead with strange, faint grins, as if they could see something other than their grim surroundings. Harold slipped his key into a minuscule hole in the bottom of the eye-gate box. It disappeared as the keyhole closed over it. He set the box on the ground. "Step back," he said. We backed up against the stone wall of the stairwell. Music came out, muffled at first, and then tiny cracks appeared on the box. We watched as it began to separate and fall open in strips, still connected. Light came through the slits and the music grew louder. The whole box opened like a flower, and the light and sound were everywhere, blinding us and filling our ears. They formed a tangible mist that smelled like familiar blossoms. The trails of mist spread until the castle was filled with its sweet smell. As the haze seeped into every cell, we heard moaning, crying, and painful shouting. As directed by Harold, the soldiers were ready to help the prisoners as their eyes opened and they could see what we saw. The mist clearly revealed great webs of light lines crisscrossing through the cells and holding the prisoners frozen in place. The fragrance of Christ was everywhere, just like when the fragrance of Christ box was opened. "Harold, did you happen to meet a young girl named Honoré in the process of building your invention?" I asked. "Why, yes, I did," he replied. "She said that in a dream a lion cub had sent her to me. Her precious box was used in my invention." As the lies were exposed, some of the prisoners were instantly freed and began praising and thanking God. As their thanksgiving went up, the box rose higher and emitted more mist, song, and fragrance. "That is the third key," Harold cried out. "The prisoners' thanksgiving song. Now bring in the second key, the transporter song." Cameron and the rest of us began singing the transporter song. Morge bage malakutem niyamaz alamarok Shandruzi gafazi sakton az badanam Morge bage malachutem niyamaz alamarok Shandruzi gafazi sakton az badanam. The song caught on and all the soldiers began to sing loudly. Then the prisoners joined in, and the box rose to the top of the castle, shaking wildly. Ley lines crisscrossed everywhere as the plans and schemes of the enemy fortress became more visible. Some of the prisoners who were singing out the second and third keys disappeared immediately. Others took a bit longer to get free from the trauma, and we took extra time to help them over their anger and loss and into thankfulness. Once they began their Thanksgiving songs, they slipped easily into the transporter song. Eventually, all the prisoners were released, and the castle was empty. We realized that their transporting was really an awakening. The images we had seen in the cells were like holograms of the prisoners. They were still living their real lives, but were like zombies, going through the motions of jobs, marriages, church life, etc. They had lost their passion as their minds were gradually overcome by the enemy's lies. The eye gate box and its keys were giving them a new start, alive again in Christ. We said a prayer for complete restoration for them and their families. All was silent as the box came back to rest at our feet. The ley lines were gone. A roar of victory rose up from the soldiers on every floor of the castle. We all shouted and sang songs of victory as we made our way back to the rear of the castle and out the door. The bats lay dead and dying everywhere, and we could hear them rasping as we crossed back under the archway. We heard great groanings and gratings in the distance. Cameron said, "It is the castle itself. The ley lines were keeping it erect and alive. It is dying and will soon collapse and fall. Quick, we must run to the open field just there." He pointed and we ran behind him. We had to jump over the dead grasshoppers strewn all over the fields. They had been killed in midair by the thankful song of the freed saints as they tried to escape. We watched from a distance as the castle slowly crumbled, taking the shape of a giant hand. The top of the mountain curled in on itself and disappeared inside the palm. A tree shot up from where the mountain had vanished and caught fire in midair. The tree emitted an unbearable hissing sound as it burned and the hand closed over it. Then the enormous hand curled up and crumbled as well, sinking slowly into the ground. The ground groaned, closing over the hand until nothing remained. We heard thumping all around and saw the last of the great grasshoppers fall from the sky, lying limp where they landed.